Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this is the chapel that time forgot. No, it's not a Doug McClure movie. It is Jenkin Chapel, Saltersford, and it is the most perfect 18th century chapel that I know. It's Church of England. It's officially called St John's Church, but it's known as Jenkin Chapel, most likely from a Welsh minister who preached here. It's a chapel in Macclesfield Forest. Now, when you think about forests, of course, we tend to think of acres and acres of woodland. But in the Middle Ages, a forest is a royal hunting preserve. It's like Sherwood Forest, of course, where Robin Hood got in trouble for killing the king's deer. Now, around here, the game was wild boar, because pig sticking is a joy for life. The wild boar, of course, are all long since gone. They are remembered by such place names as Bosley, Borsley, Wild Boar Clough, and by the Wild Boar Inn at Winkle. But here is Jenkin Chapel. Saltersford is a little scattering of houses, a tiny little village. Saltersford Hall used to be much more important than it is. Today it's a big farmhouse. But there are architectural features there that show it used to be a really big, impressive building. And perhaps the family there had some connection with this. Now you can see here we've got two-decker pulpit, we've got box pews, we've got the creed and the commandments. We've got everything that an 18th century church would have. And it's practically unaltered. There's a few alterations, relatively unimportant. Originally it was just a little barn-like structure, but a tower was later added. We'll see that when we go outside. It has a west gallery, which is just up here, and that west gallery is supported by a single wooden column over here. It's so rustic, it's so magnificent, and it is so Protestant. This is the Church of England before the Oxford movement. Now, there's a book out there, published many years ago, called Churches the Victorians Forgot. Jenkin Chapel isn't in it because it's the chapel time forgot. So as we look around, we shall see just the magnificence of this building. It's one of my favourite buildings in the entire world. It really is. It's so little and rural and English and Anglican and Protestant. So without further ado, let's have a good look around. And yes, I am getting into a box pew to turn the camera off. As usual, we start here at the west end. Now we're inside the tower, which is also the porch. That was the sound of me backing into the door. And you can see here this lovely interior, box pews, the little chancel arch. The building is round about the mid-18th century, maybe a bit earlier than that, and it is just this lovely example of the 18th century. Now, it's so small, there isn't a three-decker pulpit, there's only a two-decker because there's not enough room for a third deck. You can see how narrow the centre aisle is and the box pews packed either side. This is sheep farming country, and many of the pews would have been occupied by local farmers. This larger pew here is not in fact a big pew for important people, that's actually some of the free seating. So that actually is the opposite of a posh pew. We have up here, I believe, so the creed, the commandments, and the Lord's Prayer. And then we've got another Lord's Prayer with this painted angel over the chancel arch. I say chancel arch, it's a chancel doorway, isn't it, really? Because the building very much, and we'll see when we get outside, it looks like a farmhouse or a cottage with a kitchen built on, and the kitchen is, I suppose, it's not really the kitchen, it's the dining room, it's the communion area, it's the chancel. And so what you've got here is you've got your main preaching box, and it is a box, there's the ceiling, and you can see the only really recent thing, modern thing, is that stained glass window up there. And you've got your pulpit and reading desk. I assume really that it may have been the clerk's pew, and the minister would just have conducted the service from the pulpit. You'll also notice we've got these hat pegs along the outside here, and of course that's for the gentlemen would hang their hats on the pegs. You'll find them in older dissenting churches as well as Anglican places like this. And the only really posh memorial in here is this: "Thy will be done," erected by the teachers and scholars of Kettleshume National Schools in affectionate remembrance of Hannah, Matilda and Elizabeth, the loved and only children of James Jackson, churchwarden of this parish. They departed this life January the 21st and 26th, 1873, aged respectively 10 and 8 years, so that suggests they both caught a disease and it killed them. "Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And then you've got underneath, this is carved by Podmore of Manchester. Here's this lovely desk and this glorious pulpit. I mean, seriously. And the windows, plain glass windows. When you get outside, you'll just see how gorgeous the setting here is as well. And we go into the tiny little chancel. It is a bit like a kitchen, isn't it, really? And the vestry is off here. The vestry's open. And you can see the vestry is just this little lean-to space. Not a lot in it at all. We've got the candlestick there. We've got Feed My Sheep, the east window. Little bit of decoration, the ceiling rose in the chancel. And there's the font. That is a font. You're not a bird bath, it is a font with its original cover. Is this not the most beautiful building? And people rave about these big Gothic sanctuaries, and I just think this is a place where farming folk have met year on year, century on century. And there's the gallery, West Gallery. That would be the free seats. Most of the free seats would be up there. The communion table, these lovely communion rails. I mean, what could be more perfect in its own little way than Jenkin Chapel? So tiny, so little. Box pews, a bit higgledy-piggledy these days as they have settled, the building has settled over time. And it is the chapel that time forgot, a church that still exists, at least physically, in the late 18th, early 19th centuries. A building that bears witness to the Protestantism of the Church of England and to a culture that is vanishing fast away. It's still a working church, actually. There are still services held here, not very often. I think it's just once a month now, but it's still a working church. It's still a place where people come to worship as they have for so long, amidst the beauties of the Peak District. We go outside, we'll see that. One can wax lyrical about it. Look at that, the baize covered bookboard, and we can slowly ascend the pulpit steps and get a good view, obviously, from here. And look, this is the minister's view. I just put the camera inside the pulpit, and you can see down at the box pews, a paradise of box pews, a paradise of a chapel, a church, place of joy. The gallery is generally not open, it's accessed externally, and you can quite see it's probably a bit of a health and safety risk at the moment, and that's life. Anyway, it's a lovely building, and we'll go down again down to that font. I mean, seriously, but it's such a typical 18th century font placement there. You put your font not at the door as they did in the Middle Ages, but at the front, so that people can see without craning their necks. And there we have this front pew, the bigger pew. I suspect it's the hall pew, the pew for the big house. Big house as big as they come around here, which isn't huge, isn't gigantic. Some tulips in the window, and the old lichen-grown graves beyond. There is something about this old chapel that is either damp on the wall, a bit melancholy, but at the same time, there is something. It is, as I said a bit facetiously starting out, the chapel time forgot, and while time forgets it, it shall last. A memorial to ordinary folk who built an ordinary chapel for their ordinary worship of the great God who came down to us ordinary people and was born not in a palace, but was born in Bethlehem of Judea in an ordinary residence to an ordinary family, and grew up in an ordinary house in an ordinary village called Nazareth. Of such are the kingdom of heaven. We'll go outside and finish admiring this building that is just unspeakably glorious, unspeakably beautiful. And so here we are outside at Jenkin Chapel, Saltersford, and you can see what I mean about this. Basically, it's like a farmhouse, the original building, because remember this tower over here wasn't here originally. I stand off the tower, and what you see is like a farmhouse with a little kitchen extension. No, it's a chapel with its little saddleback tower at the west end. This is a later addition. This is to put the bell in, and the bell would ring out. I don't know whether it still does, maybe it still does, ring out across the valleys, summoning the people to worship. And it's still so much as it was 200 years ago. 200 years ago, you could have come here and seen the same chapel, with the same fenestration and the same tower and the same interior, and the chapel time forgot. And so it's not used much these days. People have cars, and there are fewer people living in these valleys. It's not anymore. They're great flocks of sheep and the house servants and the shepherds, and now it's very much a quiet place. And on a quiet spring afternoon, as afternoon thinks about becoming evening, it is a beautiful place to be. Well, let's have a look around the outside. There will be some wind noise here because we're in the valley. We're quite high up here in the Peak District, and the wind is whistling through the branches of the trees and whistling past the chapel and rattling the chapel door. So let's have a look around. And so here we are outside at Jenkin Chapel, Saltersford. I'm speaking up because the wind is picking up even as I speak. You can see here this very, very lovely saddleback tower. We'll see it better when we go around the front. And the windows, no big windows. It's all very much farmhouse type windows. A little chapel yard, little graveyard around it. And that little tower has got a single bell in it, ding dong, to summon the good folk of Saltersford to worship, to meet in their beautiful chapel there. I mean, you just look at that. That is, there's just something so magnificent about it, in its simplicity, in its ordinariness, its carriage stone roof. There's a little chimney. The stove's not there anymore. That's different heating now. But it's a little chimney, little tower, little bell turret. Which is also the porch, which is also, you can see, it's the gallery stairs. And that, of course, is really good with that little interior, because what it means is you haven't got, if you've got an emergency or something, you haven't got people rushing down from the gallery into the chapel. You've got an external stair. So very safe, health and safety conscious. Even then, the graves, of course, are all on the south side and towards the east, because that's what you do, because the north side has connotations. It's where suicides are buried and that sort of thing. It's people who are regarded as having done what they ought not to have done. That was the way it was seen in those days. So that's the very beautiful church, and again, it's so like a farmhouse or a cottage down here. It's not down in the bottom of the valley, it's up the side of the valley, and we have here, I mean, just look at the scenery. What a setting it is. What a place for a chapel. What a place to meet that's not a road. Well, it is a road. It's an ancient road. You can't actually drive on it. This is a working road. So it's where three roads meet. And again, we have this marvellous solid stonework, and the windows, plain glass, because again this is a Protestant chapel. It's a place of worship. It's a place where the worship is the worship of that is directed by the Word of God and not by man's ideas. Well, that's the idea anyway. It's a Protestant place of worship. I'll just cross the road so we can have a good look. In fact, here we have the St John the Baptist Free Chapel, June 24th, 1733, and then a little bit later you have the tower is added, but 1733, so more than 250 years of worship here at this chapel that is the... I just love it. I don't think one can rather facetiously call it, I do, the chapel that time forgot, but there is something splendid about it, and the setting here, I mean down in the valley, Goyt Valley that way, and then the road. This is the road that heads off towards Macclesfield, because this is in Macclesfield, in Macclesfield Forest, and so back up past the tower. Obviously I can't linger in the middle of the road because it's in the middle of the road, and the thing about being in the middle of the road is you're in danger of being run over, which we would not want. Yes, the gallery door is securely bolted, which and padlocked, which is entirely sensible, and I would advise to be done if it wasn't, because it's probably not very safe. But there's those stairs up there, and that glorious little bell tower with its little louvered openings for the bell sound to come out of, and then of course beyond the hills, the valleys, the Peak District. There's a car going past. So, the chapel that time forgot. And so there you have it, the chapel time forgot, Jenkin Chapel, Saltersford. I don't know where you can find a better example of a practically unaltered 18th century country chapel here among the hills of the Peak District. It's so atmospheric, it's so beautiful, and it's so little, isn't it? I mean, you can almost pick it up. It's so tiny, and the interior the same. Well, thank you for watching, because there's a sheep staring at me. I'll just stare back. But thank you for watching, and hope you enjoy these videos. Obviously I enjoy this one. I mean, one of my favourite buildings in the entire world, this one is. I've been here many times, and it's good to find it open again and to be able to give a little tour here on this video. Well, again, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until the next time.